Welcome to a stationary and sunglass free edition of Wandering Talks. It is I, your wanderer, Johnny Lee Chapman III. And today is a special day for so many reasons. Today is the first official calendar day of winter, the solstice. And this begins this is where it all began. Last winter taking walks through this trail system that is conveniently located walking distance from my own backyard. And I just decided to take a walk out in nature, and as I knew I was sit and think to myself and process and wander and wonder, I figured I've got this really cool phone. Shout out to the Samsung Galaxy Flip Z6. Really does wonders. And what I also had was time to talk. I love journaling. I love reflecting. I think something that I do a lot of is self-reflection and awareness to the way that not only do I operate in this world, but how does the world operate around me? I really take intentional time to look and decipher and question even the things that should seem so unquestionable. I always but why don't we question it? And it's always that question of why. And that's what got this here. That's where this recording came into play. It was me asking so many different questions. It was me inquiring while moving my body. I know that there are a lot of stories about some of the more successful people in history or in our times who have particular routines and rituals that actually revolve around wandering. The one that comes to mind is Nietzsche, who, however you feel about him, is how you feel about him. His relationship to walking is what was unique. Trying to take a walk every day in his later years when, his mind was already being fried by not schizophrenia, but syphilis. But the act of walking, the ability to just take your physical vessel on a journey, whether it's 20 minutes, 2 hours, 10 steps. You probably want to do more, but the sense of moving the body, because we love to separate mind, body, and spirit, but it really ultimately is one. It really ultimately is the mind and the body working as one singular unit. There really is no separation if we want to be truly honest about it, because humans for thousands and thousands and thousands of years never considered the idea that this is all separate. We all thought it was together. We all thought of ourselves as units and together with this earth, with the nature, with the elements that exist all around us. We were always part of it, and we still are, but now we want to be in a position where we're in control of it, where we have to be able to have possession and value and the ability to manipulate and manufacture and produce. Why is that? Where did we go from being one with this to being separate and above it? And we can trace history, we can trace different cultures, we can trace where it comes from. And I mean, it's kind of obvious in some of it, Western capitalism. But some of it's not so obvious. And that's what got me asking more questions. That's what got me curious. It wasn't just the things that were occurring in my current life, but also the things that had existed before me. And I wanted to know what had existed before me in order to know maybe this is how things are going now. Because if there's something that is very universal to humans all across time and eras, is that we love predictable patterns and behaviors. Ever since especially the agricultural revolution, even before that, when there were foraging bands in Africa, what we had was synergy with not only the elements but the seasons. And here we are at the transition, at least from our point of view, of another season. One of the shortest days of the year. The days of darkness. So now we begin to wait for light to come on the horizon. Today will be the darkest day of the year. There's something powerful about that. To know that throughout the course of a whole period of time, a cycle, that we have now once again arrived to the darkest day of the year. And from this point, light comes, and that's the season of winter. Things are dying and decaying, but they do this so that there's room for them to come to life. We knew this intrinsically because we were so in tune with our elements, with the nature that was related to us by proximity at that. Like, we didn't need to fully understand and know like the nature of things across the globe because we weren't attached to it. There was no interglobal network. And maybe there is something wrong with an interglobal network. Who knows? But what I do like to think I know is the feeling that by choosing to live life according to the seasons, I've really felt a truer sense of humanity. I don't know if that fully makes sense, but I've always been wondering, like, how did humans before all of this stuff exist? Before the last 300 years that I've felt like that's been the whole of our existence. Like, before states were a thing, what were we doing? What is in our DNA that is constantly there that we have no idea and we repress on a natural level? Like, why? I think the vultures are starting to circle for the raccoon over here. That's what I'm talking about. Like, this is magical. There's a raccoon over there that is not living anymore. But there's vultures in the sky. There's birds chirping over here. There's crinkling leaves everywhere. There's overcast skies. This is nature, and we are it. But for so much of our lives, we've wanted to not live according to our nature. We wanted to compartmentalize and put ourselves into these blocks that somebody who lived years and generations ago decided was the best for us. Like, is it really the best? Oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Yeah, like what I tell you, there they go. Like, who was that? And why should they choose how I live? Why should they choose what sets the standards and the parameters for this group of people? Who are they to say these things are true? Who is any of us to say what we say and be like, this is law, this is truth, without really having an equitable and conscious conversation about it? And that's the ups and downs of culture in itself, is that a lot of it is impressed upon us whether we know it or not. And what does that mean to have culture impressed upon us? And what would it be like to explore other forms of culture, to see how the impressions are done elsewhere based on whatever is in their proximity, their physical location, and also now the effects of an overlying culture of globalization and Western culture that permeates most of the entire world that we know. These questions are very near and dear to my heart, especially at this chapter in my life. I can't say that I've always had these questions, or I've always been like I'll say that. I've always been a questioner. I would not be doing wandering talks if I wasn't just questioning all the time. If you've ever listened to any of them, I'm always asking questions more than answering. And leading myself to a point of like, there's something more here to know. I wonder what it is. I feel like all of that really, really led me into the arts, because of the way that art can be an answer but also a question to so many other things out there in the world. I've been able to inquire in ways that I don't know if anybody other people have done in this way for sure, but what that means for them. So to be able to almost have a full year, I don't know when the exact calendar date of my first Wandering Talks was, but I know that it began, it might have been January, it might have been in a couple of weeks actually. No, I think my first one was I think this might be the day. If it is, heck yeah, congratulations, you did it, a whole year. So now I've been able to witness a cycle of life occur, and it's been able to be digitally recorded here today. That's so powerful to have, especially when I think about my relationship to record keeping. That's the other thing that inspired Wandering Talks is I write about this stuff, I journal about it, and I also now have a video journal that can go along with all the other records I have that are just documents and evidence of my questioning. Now I have another form of it that documents what I'm thinking about right now in today's times. And that's going to be so powerful and wonderful years later when I might hit 2 years of this, or I might be 5 years removed from this after only doing it for this season, and be able to go back and say, I could at least tell where my head, heart, and body, and soul, and all this oneness was at this particular time. Because it was recorded. Because it was documented. It can now exist for as long as this kind of stuff exists. To be able to look back is what allows us to continue to move forward. And that's as cliche as it comes, but I always tell people that there's truth in cliches. There's truth in cliches. By being able to have records, we can compare. By being able to have records, we can remember and recall things that we would eventually lose memory of, because there's only so much carrying capacity within just our minds alone. With records, we can trace and put ourselves back to those moments. And that has so much it has the ability to really shape the actions of today. And in a world that is so driven by future-oriented approaches, we tend to overlook the past. We tend to forget it. We tend to just be like, that was in the past, and the past is so far ago, because of the way that our culture is set up. It's a fast culture. It's designed to be quick and to be sudden. It's not a matter of it's slower. And when I think about how the seasons change, they change at a slow pace. The seasons don't change in a week. They change over months. And these are the seasons that we have chosen. There's other cultures who have other seasons, but seasons are designed to take time. They're designed for there to be some level of newness, but also a feeling of longevity. That in itself, everything in our world reminds us to go slow. Except this. Except this. And that's what our bodies are calling out for all the time. All the things that we have now created labels and terms and definitions for that is backed by science that's only 300 to 400 years ago, based on information from one small group of individuals that are just expanded across all, and all other forms were let down and pushed down. From all of that, how much do we really know? How much of it is really there and valid in fact? How much of it is true that we think is true? I don't know where I was going with that. But the seasons, yes, they take their time and they go slow. Like, who's to say that that's not the most important thing? Yes, I remember the things that we have scientifically called conditions and problems and issues, and I know that they exist. And what if it is also a reaction to our bodies being moved too fast, for things to be too hasty for us, for there not to be pace and rapport and slowness? That's what we need more of these days, is to slow it down. And that's what winter asks us to do, to slow it down. So we don't fight it. Although we can wander and talk, sometimes just have to be stationary and slow. And I hope that whatever you are doing this season, that you can invite some slowness with it. Because that right there, that is humanity. That is human. Being at one with everything before and after and between. Thank you again, and happy solstice.